Dankert, singing for us a song which offers sage advice to the worried citizen. Sylvia's mother, the celebrated Emmeline Dankert, will accompany on the pianoforte.
All right, folks, it's time for Shiny Side Out with David Dunger and Mecky. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. Take it away, guys.
Welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave.
And Mecky.
Live from the Revolution Radio studios in Sydney. You know you can join us in the chat room at freedomslips.com and follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Check out shinysideout.net for show archives, notes, and links we paste into the chat during each show. Listen to us on FM in Kentucky, WZZR 101.3. But there's also many other ways to listen to us listen to Revolution Radio, and that is going to the website, freedomslips.com. You can get an app for your phone, Revolution Radio, TalkStream Live, TuneIn.com, Radio Tuner, Spreaker, iHeart, and Live 365. You can also listen to us on a Grace Tabletop Digital Radio or driving around in the US in a GM motor vehicle with a receiver-enabled radio. All are revolutions in radio. The number to call in if you're in the USA is 347-688-2902 or via Skype. Just add Freedom Screen. Solaris had another great show, huh, Mecky?
Excellent show. Always great guests on her show. Always great guests and great topics. This topic, I think, close to our heart, in my opinion, obviously. And again, I want to shout out to Solaris. Thank you very much for the documentary. Actually, I watched it a couple of times now. Very insightful. Very controversial. If you don't know anything about the subject matter of mind control or HARP or how they use the ionosphere to try to, send messages to our brain. I know it sounds like really like tin pot stuff, like tin foil head material, right? But guys, make no mistake, right? A lot of this stuff is real, and people are affected by it. And it's really not that magical, to be honest with you. In fact, we will talk about magic stuff today, and there's a few things and a few advances in science we're going to share with you today, which make what Solaris has experienced quite plausible, right? Because the technology is there now, and in fact, in the open to some extent. Whereas, of course, what she experienced is mostly black ops hidden technology. It's more advanced than what is open on the table, but nonetheless, there it is. It has also been interesting news week. I would like to, on a sad note, Dave, and I know you, of course, want to speak to this as well, but my condolences to Worf Poe's family, whom we have lost just last week, I think. Is that correct?
Yeah, just a couple of days ago. We only found out today. So, otherwise known as Michael Hemmingson, he had the Dreaming Show and the other one. I forget the other.
Storytime, I think.
Yeah, Storytime and The Art of Dreaming.
Yeah, and look, we are conspiracy theorists, I guess. but the truth is, there's a lot of researchers have recently died in this last year. Strangely, some have died strangely. A lot of cancers have people have been taken by cancers. So I don't know, guys. Maybe we're scratching too much of the surface away. Maybe we are targets now. Maybe we've become legitimate targets, in the views of some government agencies. Who knows? But you can't stop the truth. You can't stop it rolling. You can deny it. We've had another encounter on our website with someone who thinks what we say is hokum. I think hokum or humbug, and it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. We should focus on real issues. Well, the real issues are out there, and we address them as well, Dave and I think, quite a lot, in fact. In fact, our show on slavery, I thought, was very much addressing current problems.
Exactly.
Right, Dave? I mean, and we speak constantly about the oppression of Wall Street on Main Street. We've explained how it all worked. If somebody has a criticism of us, that's fine. But listen to our shows before you criticize what we do. If you never listen...
Yeah, and that's certainly been the failing of the person who is criticizing us. What's weird is they're criticizing us, but also providing no information to back themselves up.
The funny thing is, we won't spend too much time on it. But this person posted something on our site in argument against. This is specifically about the Star Child skull. Okay, so I go to the site. It's 2 pages worth of a chat, skeptics for the skeptics or something like that, and the site, especially the moderator, whom I thought was very good, like an actual skeptic, who wants a critical analysis of the situation and the data, pulls people up of being armchair skeptics. So you're not adding anything, you're not providing anything. And when I played that back to the person, it was clear that whoever had posted that, the person, right, didn't read the post. They hadn't read through it. They just, I think, grabbed the headline, maybe the Google search, refuting the Star Child skull. Boom! First thing that came up, he would have popped on our side. Pooped on our side.
I think Freud is telling us that that's appropriate.
I think you're right. Sorry, Dave. I don't want to harp on it, but it's been an interesting news week as well, though, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been completely jam-packed full. There was a couple of things, Meki, that I noticed. I know that I send you all the stuff that I find. One of those it's to do with... I'll do the funniest one first, which was...
Sure.
Iran claims that NASA is run... the USA is run by Nazi space aliens. Yeah. I thought that was gold. I'll tell you why. It looks like they've just been Googling conspiracy sites, and they watched a couple of YouTube videos, and that's it. But it's not like they're flexible on it. They're so not flexible. They're completely convinced. They've said there's enough information out there to believe it's true, and well, just understand. You thought the Nazis are bad. Here comes the US. And this is Iran.
It's...
And why? Why?
Yeah.
Because the politicians are puppets and they're being played dead set. They're being played by the aliens.
Look, I actually have to say to you there, that next week when we do have our wrap up, it's going to be 4-hour show, and hopefully we have Solaris on there. We've told her it's next time for at least an hour or so. When we wrap it all up, you will see that okay, it's actually not that far away from what we think may be happening. Okay, so we should reserve our judgment here, because the thing is this, and we're going to talk about this today as well, conditioning to some extent. There are a lot of things going on, and a lot of things that are on the fringe, but you have to ask yourself, why are they on the fringe? Why are these things fringe-worthy, as it were? Because we live in a certain box, all of us. We live in a box that is defined by the parameters put in place by whom? By whom? That is the question, right? But sorry, let's go on with a couple more news stories. There's some interesting things coming out globally. Of course, again, the weather. America is freezing. in minus 40 degrees, and we are boiling in plus 40 degrees, talking centigrade here, and we've now had consecutive hottest days like for a long time, right? These have been phenomenally hot days.
Yeah, in fact, they've been so hot that during the week, Adelaide was stated as being the hottest city in the world.
Yeah.
You think, Adelaide. If you think about its latitude and its connection with the coldest water on the planet, the Arctic Ocean, the Antarctic Ocean, or the Southern Ocean, like that doesn't make sense. I understand the meteorological reason why it's hot. But I was trying to tell someone during the week, and last night at a wedding I was at, it was a great wedding. At the poor people at my table, I swear, they said, "Oh, the Earth's not getting hot. It's just not. It's just freak stuff everywhere." Yeah, okay. That's your standpoint at the moment. I'll ask you again in 10 minutes. I said, if the sun is a constant output, and you have a piece of metal on a table that's insulated from everything else, and the amount that heats up can be measured in physics by kilojoules or joules of energy required to make heat in the coin, for instance. Are you with me?
I'm with you, mate.
All right. So I said, in the 50s, if you measured the temperature of the coin, which is an analysis of the amount of joules being received by it. If you have an apparatus that will follow the sun like a tracker that tracked the sun, so the surface of the coin was perfectly perpendicular to the sun's energy coming to it, and it was at the same time on the same day in a clear sky at the same latitude, given the amount of joules per square yard. I'll do this for the Americans. Then, why is it hotter now than it was then? That's the question to be asked. There is more joules of energy, or more energy reaching the surface of the Earth than there ever has been. The ocean reaching another half degree in the last 30 years, increasing another half degree, means that the energy, the ozone and CO2 are good for you, right? That's great. But the amount of energy reaching the Earth's surface is more now than it ever has been. And that's why some of the overnight temperatures that Adelaide had was 31 and 30 degrees. So there was only a differential of 14 degrees between day and night. But how could we not have that same amount of heat loss? Don't talk to me about CO2, because this is perfectly clear air. We're in the least inhabited part of the whole world, and the air is distributed and cleaned in parts per million. We're doing okay with CO2. If the ozone hole is open and allowing more energy to come through, that's one explanation for it. And then I asked the people at the table, do you still think the way you used to? And they said no. So it's only, you can only make a judgment given the information that you're being fed. So if the media is feeding you your information, then you're going to think a particular will polarize you. And we saw no better, we've seen in the last, say, 5 years, we've seen no better examples than all of the media around the planet telling us what to think, what to do, how to act, and what opinion we should have. I actually tell you that.
You think what I think.
I can make if you hate war, I can make you say war is good, but I only have to do the lead-in arguments to make you say that. I'm not going to do that because I don't believe I should put you in that position. But that's what they do to us. A shooting, the police shooting someone is no different than a bad person shooting an even badder person. It isn't.
Yes. Look, I saw some horrendous things on that, in fact. In America, it seems, and sorry to digress slightly, but the cops seem to be a lot more trigger-happy than they used to be. I saw this clip of a woman with 6 children in a minivan, and I think she was pulled over for some spurious reason.
Yep.
She tried to get away from the cops, and they started open fire on the minivan, which has 6 children in the back.
What?
That's a good idea. No. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I've got the link somewhere.
Yep.
It's shocking.
Hey, I forgot. What show are we doing today?
90 and 9. 90 and 9. That means we are one show away from 100.
Awesome.
100. Jeez. Oh, good Lord. I wouldn't. Well, who would have thunk it, right? Seriously.
Who'd have thunk it?
Who would have thunk it? 100. That's a milestone in any book, and especially because we haven't bored you yet. that's really the key thing. I mean, Dave and I, we love our soapbox, as it were. It comes before the ammo box, which is good. The ballot box is not really doing any good, but the soapbox is certainly here. And there are a few more news stories. Like obviously, the UN is urging action over the rising CO2 levels. That's fantastic. That's not going to happen. Also, did you know that the Jade Rabbit rover is exploring moon soil?
Oh, very nice.
So the Chinese have, so that's a good thing, I think. The Chinese taking the leading edge here in space exploration. I'm really curious to see if there's more coming out there, or if it's going to be as close-lipped as the Americans. Another interesting thing is we've entered now the era where your genome, your personal genetic makeup, as it were, can be unraveled for as little as $1,000.
Wow.
$1,000. So if you want your genome sequenced, whatever, $1,000 will do it. So that's pretty. I mean, we're very close. We're not quite there yet, and it's not commercially available, but we're getting closer and closer. So a couple of interesting things in the science era there.
Gee, that's amazing.
Now, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating. I really do. What else do we have, Dave? We have a chock-a-block show of magic for you. The magic is what will bind our theory together to some extent, because it touches on certain things we've discussed with you before. We have spoken about magic a little bit, not a lot, and we will ask you a few questions later in the show around your personal observations as to how you react when you hear the word. We want to give you a bit of a background on the magic itself, or how magic plays a part in our lives, history of magic to some extent, right through classical antiquity, Middle Ages, Renaissance to modern times, and then I guess the decline of magic in the very modern era, where magic is really more seen as an illusion or some kind of sleight of hand card trick that amuses the people in the audience. But I'm excited, Dave, about show 100. I really am.
I am. I'm looking forward to it too. Hey, I just wanted to also point out there's a lot of viral sea life, 98% of the sea floor covered in. Yes. I wanted to cover that off. So if you don't mind, okay. So
no.
I found going viral was all this information. InfoWars, Rents. There's a whole bunch of websites. RT, you name them, they're all promoting this single link that came out talking about, like it was an article. I was talking about 90% of the sea floor off California, they actually said the Pacific, but they really meant that. That was the underlying thing that looked like it was deleted. Was covered in dead sea life from higher up in the layers of the ocean. And I did some really extensive, it took me 15 minutes, extensive research to uncover it. And I found a link where it, let me just, I'm not going to be able to find a link, but I'll read you the statement. This says, additionally, a study published, this was the ante to the 98% of the seafloor covered in dead sea life. The cause was meant to be Fukushima, and it's life's terrible, right? I'm not saying Fukushima is good. All I'm trying to do is say, look, I wanted to know where the data came from, and I found this. So additionally, a study published in the journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found 98% of the ocean floor is littered with dead sea life, a metric that has increased 97% in the last 2 years alone. In the 24 years of this study, the past 2 years have been the biggest amounts of basically the sea life falling to the floor, which is it detritus? Detritus. By far. Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute marine biologist Christine Hufford told National Geographic last November. Now, it's a lot of stuff later. I found this, and it comes from, now I can't say that Dr. M and his post from the website blog, I think it was a website blog. Oh, let me have a look. I can't find it now. But this is what he says. He says, if anything, the paper is a cautionary tale of climate change, not radiation. Seafloor die-off, Dr. M of Deep Sea News. All right? So this guy, who is in the Deep Sea News realm, is saying that it's just climate change. Don't worry about it. It's not Fukushima, nothing to worry about. It's climate change. And I thought that to be an extraordinary position to take, because he's at no point other than that, Dr. M has ever said climate change was a bad thing. He goes on to say that the graph showing the heightened amount, increased amount of dead sea life in the floor was going to be beneficial to those crabs and sea cucumbers that eat it at 4,000 meters down. That's awesome. But he really didn't. He denied implicitly that there was any radiation issue, only by stating once again one of those great trolls to say, well, there's no proof that it's radiation. And, if I'm staring at the wall and I can see a plane, and people in the same room can see a plane coming directly towards my window, but I look at the wall saying, show me the proof. I can't see any on the wall. So I don't know where to look. He said that this single, for Americans, buoy in the ocean, around that on the sea floor is where they found more sea life dead. There's no proof of anything, to be honest. It's a bit of a shame to see so much bickering about the smallest detail in these stories, where the story itself went, it's all over the place, honestly. But the big one that I really want to say is that the doomsday clock is now at 5 minutes to midnight. It was 6, but now it's 5.
Oh, it's 5 minutes again. Can I just say in support of your story, I'm just looking at a site here, and this is RT Russian News. Mm-hmm. A record high level of beta rays released from radioactive strontium-90 has been detected at the crippled Fukushima nuclear power plant beneath the number 2 reactor's well facing the ocean, according to the facility's operator. A record level. Now, there has been a spike of radiation in this area since the beginning of the year. The measurements taken on this Monday, showed 2.4 million parts per liter, while the results taken on January 9 indicated that amount of beta rays at 2.7 million particles, according to TEPCO's Friday announcement. Okay, so it is a record high level. Okay, it's happening. And there's some really scary maps that you can Google yourself to look at the spread of the radiation that's coming out of Fukushima. Right, I'm just adding this to the chat room here. I'll give you this one image.
Did you say strontium-90?
Favorite one.
Did you say strontium-90?
Strontium-90, sir. Yep.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yes. That's it. And the half-life is not very good on that for us. So this is the spread in the ocean. If this image I've just posted, or there's a number of images, shows you how the radiation is spread, bypassing Australia almost altogether. Luckily, if you look at the images. But certainly hitting the west coast of both North and South America, and certainly all of the Pacific Islands. I guess we're a bit lucky. We've got some reefs and islands in the way in Australia that shield us from some of that radiation. Well, look, Dave, you're correct. It's crazy stuff.
I'm gonna add to this. I'll do a split screen. I'm gonna add to this. Look, what Dr. M and all of the other people neglected was they focused on this seafloor, carnage. Yeah, so everything floating to the seafloor or sinking to the seafloor. But they completely ignored the huge marine die-offs in Monterey Bay. The sardine fishermen saying there's almost none in the ocean. They all died. All of the fish that were in Monterey Bay that say that they had suffocated in the water. Millions of fish, they had to scoop them all out. You asked the guy that scooped them out if he counted many of them. You've got these things going on all over the place. This year there wasn't birds dropping from the sky, but we had crabs, dolphins, whales, fish, octopus, you name it. They're all washing up on the shores. There's all these huge marine die-offs, and you know that you only have to affect plankton, and the food chain is ruined. So think about the things that have to eat the things that have washed up.
Yeah. Well, think about it this way, right? If you are trapped in a poisoned well, and you could feel that something wasn't quite right, you try to get the heck out of there yourself, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, not to be flippant here, but I mean, animals aren't stupid. They know when something isn't well, and they usually escape, wherever they can. And if the escape is not possible in the safe direction, then I guess they beach themselves, or they just die at the bottom of the ocean. It's that simple. Guys, this is a real catastrophe here that's going on.
Hey, just to lighten the note so we can do a segue. I'm going to show everyone what it looks like next week. The 2 cameras.
Okay.
Awesome. Great airtime that was. So we've got next week's going to be a great show. Mickey and I will be in the same location.
For the first time.
For the first time, absolutely. It's going to be great. Looking forward to it.
Not ever, just for the show. We've actually shared a space before. just for the shows, we've never been together. The magic of technology.
I know.
And speaking of which, magic, right? Segue. Let's get cracking. Because it's a fairly lengthy topic, and I do want to share our theory of magic with you toward the end of the explanation of what magic is and how it seems to have evolved in our civilization. Of course, we're not trying to be exhaustive here, and there are many aspects of magic we can't be touching on because it's a very large subject. One thing, though, I would like to share with you. It's a real enough thing for a lot of people. It's a real enough thing for people that believe in it. I have personally had first-hand accounts of the power of certain magical rituals, as well as, I guess, spells and charms and so forth. That I used to live with a Creole family, and they told me a couple of things from their background and other people as well. It's stuff that is not taken lightly. It is not joked about. This is taken very seriously, and some cultures obviously believe in it a lot more than others. But you have to treat it with respect. Some personal experiences as well around the tarot and the Ouija board have taught me that as well. You must treat this stuff with respect, because sometimes you can open doorways that you cannot close, and you see things that you think that's not right, that shouldn't happen, but they do. And I know the naysayers and the debunkers and the skeptics will say, yeah, look, you just hallucinated, or you're obviously mistaken. We can't replicate it under laboratory conditions. That's right, you can't, and that's my whole point. Some of these things you can't replicate under certain prescribed scientific conditions, because certain things have to be just right. In fact, your mindset needs to be right to perform these things. If your mindset is wrong, or if there's a detractor in the room, or if somebody's poking fun at it, you will get a non-valid result. It will happen. It is just like observing something in quantum space. the observer can change the outcome of the experiment. And this is what I'm trying to explain to my beloved skeptics, that we have to find some kind of method, some kind of scientific method that can help us observe phenomena of that nature. That's all I'm saying. That's I don't want to be hated for it, but we need to go beyond the scientific method as we have today, because obviously we are not observing something from the outside only anymore. We are now involved in the system of things. We always have been. See, science has always thought, we are looking at something from the outside in. We're not. We are part of the system we are studying. Your breathing affects everything. I mean, your very presence can affect the outcome of an experiment. Okay, I mean, okay, you can have control studies in a very limited area, very limited data sets you can get from that as well, and you can control it to a certain extent. But if the more you want to study, or the larger the field of your study is, the less likely you are not to influence it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're with me. But anyway, so that's just my little spiel around science and how it can help us study magic. We just have to come up with a new thing. So Dave, what is your take on magic before we get in? I mean, I'm just curious. I've sort of thrown this a little at you, this topic. So I'm just curious if how you feel about actually raising some, because we're neck deep in tinfoil hat zone right now.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know how to fold one, I'm just going to put the image up.
Nice.
Okay, so magic to me comes in a couple of forms. And before we get to the show notes, I love to be impressed by something that is sleight of hand. I'm truly impressed by mechanical magic, which is sometimes, like, magicians will use that, where it's an optical illusion. They can get in, hide themselves in some compartment of something which doesn't appear to be there. Put knives and stuff in, or, slice someone about. I like that what it does to my brain is no different than an optical illusion on a piece of paper. I'm amused by it. I think it's amusing. But if I was to, not to give too much away, but if I was, for instance, to go back in time with my my smartphone, non-branded smartphone, if I went back in time, even 40 years ago, I think people would have a very strange reaction to it. 40 years ago, yeah, that's pretty good. But if I went back 100 years, their impression is completely different. We've been accustomed to change. Henry Ford did this to us, by the way, if you didn't know. Henry Ford changed the radiator, changed the door handles, changed the canopy, changed the front headlights, the arrangement of them, and sold you a brand new car every year. We became accustomed, I shouldn't say we became accustomed. We were taught. That goes with what we say. We were taught that to expect change. Yeah. And we're in the highest level of that right now, where every single year we expect a brand new thing, and halfway through the year we expect to be told about the thing coming, and we're being conditioned and forcefully. It's against our will. We don't want to buy another thing. We're happy not to, but, when they tell us we have to, everyone just bought big screen TVs, and then suddenly the 3D version came out. It's like, oh. And then they got bigger again, and now they've gone to 4K. And
yeah. But we don't have any content for that in Australia yet.
There's not. Yeah, there goes the fiber network we're about going to have.
Yeah.
Well, look, these things are magic because of a rule. Rule number 3, which we'll talk about later. But outside of tricksters and technology, the real magic, the magic which we can't describe, which may not be mechanical or technological or sleight of hand, that's the one that I love, and we're interested in that so bad that it does my head in.
Yeah. I'm with you. It's a topic that is dear to my heart because my family has been, well, I don't want to say magically gifted, but we've certainly always had cards and the tarot and astrology in the family generations back.
You knew my mum,
my grandmother.
right?
Right. Yes. Exactly. Right. So, and maybe it's a prerequisite. I'm not saying it is, but it may be a prerequisite to have this kind of mindset, to have this kind of inquisitive nature, where you do have a radio show that you call Tiny Side Out, Shiny Side Out. And sorry, I'm on painkillers. I had a tooth implant surgery on Friday, so you have to forgive my Freudian slips if they're increasing. It is a mindset that I think may be necessary to explore the unknown, the mysteries. We don't have the answers. Dave and I don't have wisdom on our side. Some maybe, but we certainly don't have all of it. All we do here is ask questions and try to poke into that hole, with a stick rather than sticking our arm in. Sometimes we stick our arm in, but so be it. So we just here to question and give you guys a perspective that you may not have had before, maybe a little knowledge imparted on the way. But do your own research. Become involved in the knowledge revolution that the internet is. Read books too. Talk to your peers. Go talk to people. In fact, you'd be surprised how many people have strange and mysterious events in their lives that they can't explain. Usually don't talk about. Sometimes people open up when you tell them that you yourself aren't as skeptical as all that. You take them at face value. I mean, what point is there in lying to you? Sure, some people will lie to you and to be interesting or to make you I guess maybe in awe of them. But for the most part, people will share with you honestly if you're honest with them. Again, no point in lying on a one-on-one conversation. There's no gain to be had that I can see. It could be wrong, of course.
Yeah, that's right. Look, if you ask anyone that they've got a ghost story.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we know from the past, from the ancient records, there's, ghouls and goblins and things that, find you in the nighttime. Yep.
Yeah. Right.
There's the mysterious, humans sculpted with dinosaurs in South America. There's the little people that live in the caves. There's things all over the place. And, I think what it is just our approach. We approach them cautiously and try and get as much data as we can. But we haven't made a final decision. The final decision's left up to those people who are doing it. Yeah, but we're bringing you the information.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of maverick explorers and researchers. There's a guy in South Africa, which we've mentioned a couple of times, that is literally covering South Africa by himself. Guys going to the Andes, or not just the Andes, but South America in general. So these places, which are so inaccessible that you really have to track there. You have to make an effort. And you come to the sites and you go, wow, what is this? Wow, what happened here? I had Machu Picchu, other places as well. There's so many. It's crazy. I mean, literally, the jungle in South America is littered with cities. Okay, it's littered. The Amazon basin as well as the mountain ranges. It's
the Amazon basin didn't have any trees in it when the people were living there.
Right.
It wasn't a rainforest. It was a huge, expansive city.
Yeah.
And the guy in South America, South Africa, he's looking at the stone rings.
Yeah.
On his own. And now he's the foremost world, knowledge on it.
I mean, there are cultures which we have lost entirely in time. Gone. Mm-hmm. There's a mention here and there. Maybe we find some artifacts, we find some ruins, maybe some language fragments, linguistic clues. There are some clues left even in the Bible, other religious books of people that existed at a time, no longer. So we can't dismiss it all. But let's get cracking on this magic thing, because I do want to finish it today with Dave, so we can give you the full wrap-up next week. So what is magic or sorcery, right? It's an attempt to understand, experience, and influence the world, and this is important, using rituals, symbols, actions, gestures, and language. You've all seen, and they all seem to have some power, these things. It's fascinating stuff. Modern Western magicians, these days generally state that magic's primary purpose is personal growth. Well, be that as it may, I think from what I've seen on TV, the purpose is making money. But so be it. And modern theories of magic may see it as the result of a universal sympathy, where some act can produce a result somewhere else, or as a collaboration with spirits who cause the effect. Right? So, and this is really where it gets interesting, because that sounds to me a lot like spooky action at a distance, right? Like a quantum kind of phenomenon. The belief in and the practice of magic has been present since the earliest human cultures, and it continues to have a very important influence on our culture, religious as well as medicine. In fact, in many cultures where you have magic and medicine mixed up. I know if you about the faith healers, for instance, in South America specifically, which operate on you without any instruments. And I watched a few things. In fact, Michael Palin once, I think it was in Brazil, he went and he saw a faith healer there, and he looked at it and he was astonished, because he goes, look, obviously the guy didn't do any tricks here. He really got something out. I have no idea how he did it, but obviously it can't be so. I remember it very clearly, and he was shocked by what he had seen, and he couldn't quite process it. And I'm not saying he instantly dismissed it, but he certainly was taken aback by what he had seen. And Michael Palin is quite the intrepid traveler. You may remember him from a 1988 documentary in 80 Days Around the World, and he has traveled around the world a lot since then. Now, the magic itself is often viewed with suspicion by the wider community, and it's usually practiced in isolation and secrecy. Now, we had witch burnings in the Middle Ages, which was largely organized by the Catholic Church. There have been other pogroms against witches in America as well, the Salem witch burnings. In the 17th century, you've got the Spanish Inquisition, which partially burned witches, but also Jews, because that was the fashion at the time. And we certainly had the occult being pursued by the Nazis. I don't know if you knew that. The Nazis themselves being very occult in their rituals and, I guess, a general view on the world, but they were certainly persecuting all other occult parties within their domain. The concept of magic as a category separate from religion first appeared in Judaism, which derided as magic the practices of pagan worship designed to appease and receive benefits from gods other than Yahweh. So, I'm a jealous God, there should be no God beside me, and so forth. So all magical practices that had to do with other gods were obviously frowned upon and usually punishable by death. Now, a person that has looked at this in some detail, Hanegraaff, argues that magic is in fact a largely polemical concept that has been used by various religious interest groups either to describe their own religious beliefs and practices, or more frequently to discredit those of others. In my view, that's a fairly narrow definition, and it doesn't really give magic its due. Dave, tell me, what does history tell us about magic?
Okay, so in ancient Egypt, the Egyptians believed that that with Heka, the activation of Ka, an aspect of the soul of both gods and humans, and divine personification of magic, they could influence the gods and gain protection, healing and transformation. Health and wholeness of being was sacred to Heka. There is no word for religion in the ancient Egyptian language, as mundane as religious worldviews were not distinct. Thus, Heka was not a secular practice, but rather a religious observance. Every aspect of life, every word, plant, animal, and ritual was connected to the power and authority of the gods. In ancient Egypt, magic consisted of 4 components: the primeval potency that empowered the creator god was identified with Heka, who was accompanied by magic rituals known as, is it Seshore, held within sacred texts called, well, it says RW. I don't know how. Ru.
Yeah, the Egyptians, similarly to the Hebrews, didn't believe in vowels.
Sounds like my ancient writing. In addition, Pekret medicinal prescriptions were given to patients to bring relief. This magic was used in temple rituals as well as in informal situations by priests. These rituals, along with medical practices, formed an integrated therapy, sort of like holistic medicine today, for both physical and spiritual health. Magic was also used for protection against the angry deities, jealous ghosts, foreign demons, and sorcerers who were thought to cause illness, accidents, poverty, and infertility. Temple priests used wands during magic rituals.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about Mesopotamia, Mick.
In parts of Mesopotamian religion, magic was believed in and actively practiced. At the city of Uruk, for instance, archaeologists have excavated houses dating from the 4th and 5th centuries BCE, which is before the Common Era, which is, before Christ, in which cuneiform clay tablets have been unearthed containing magical incantations. And it's important to realize here that the power of the word was thought to be overwhelming. Certain words of power, that's what they're called, words of power were used to conjure up images, conjure up even jinn, spirits, and bring good fortune, maybe open yourself to treasure. But Dave, classical antiquity, I believe, has brought us closer to the modern concept of magic.
Yeah, sure. In ancient Greece, magic was involved in practice of religion, medicine, and divination. The Greek mystery religions had strongly magical components, and in Egypt, a large number of magical papyri in Greek, Coptic, and Demotic have been recovered. They contain early instances of the use of magic words said to have the power to command spirits, the use of wands and other ritual tools, the use of a magic circle to defend the magician against the spirits that he was invoking or evoking, and the use of mysterious symbols or sigils, which are thought to be useful when invoking or evoking spirits. Remember, there's a difference between invoking and evoking. I suppose it would be like evicting, wouldn't it? That'd be the origin of it. So bringing them in and getting them out. The practice of magic was banned in the Roman world, and the Codex Theodosianus states, this is what it states: if any wizard, therefore, or person imbued with magical contamination, who is called by custom of the people a magician, should be apprehended in my retinue, or in that of Caesar, he shall not escape punishment and torture by the protection of his rank. So that means no one's outside of the law.
Now think about this way for a second, though. The Codex Theodosianus is a fairly serious legal document, if you will, which specifically states that people that are using magic will be punished and tortured, and they will not be protected simply because they're lord or lady of the realm or whatever, right? So magic was viewed as something very serious, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like it's not to be trifled with, and certainly these people back then didn't want to have any magic near them. And bear in mind, Romans were great engineers, right? And they had grown out of the Greek, if you will, scientific thought as well. So back then there was no separation, if you will, as we have it today, between the supernatural and the scientific or more empirical that we experience today. It was one field of existence that people experienced then, which brings us to the Middle Ages, in fact. And several medical scholars were considered to be magicians by popular legend, and notably those were Gerbert de Aurillac and Albertus Magnus. You might have heard of those guys. Both men were active in the scientific research of the day, as well as in ecclesiastical matters, which was enough to attach to them a nimbus of the occult, the hidden. Magical practice was actively discouraged by the church. Yeah, we know that you'll burn if you practice witchcraft, but it remained widespread in folk religion throughout the medieval period. The demonology and angelology contained in the earliest grimoires, a grimoire is a book of magic works, assume a life surrounded by Christian implements and sacred rituals. Okay, so it was a sort of an amalgamation, and you see that today in hoodoo and voodoo as well, where a lot of these religious icons are melding into one. The underlying theology in these works of Christian demonology encourages the magician to fortify himself with fasting, prayers, and sacraments, so that by using the holy names of God in the sacred languages, he could use divine powers to coerce demons into appearing and serving his usually lustful or avaricious magical goals. Okay? Now, think of this as well. The funny thing is this. In the Bible it says, in the beginning was the Word. The Word. We don't know what word or how the word went, but in the beginning was the Word. And it shows just how deep-seated this belief in the power of languages and the power of special words and the power of a sacred, maybe even angelic language. And in fact, in the Bible, you've got Metatron, who is the speaker for God, because you can't actually listen to God because your head would explode, according to that belief system. So you needed someone that could relay the words. And it was also the words that gave life. If you're familiar with the legend of the golem, in Jewish folklore, there's this usually a clay creature, quite large and strong, made out of clay, as I said, to protect the Jewish people, as it were. Has a little scroll put in its mouth, and on that scroll are the magic words that give it life. The golem then comes to life and protects the Jewish diaspora, as it were. Fascinating stuff. Fascinating stuff. Now, if you just take that for a second, we today have a memory of these words: abracadabra, simsalabim, okay, hocus pocus. Now, some of these are corruptions of actual Christian sayings, right? And others are really much older. Abracadabra. These are all words you're mostly familiar with. And while we probably don't intone them correctly, they may still have some power. If you come across proper power words, though, and they exist, you know, what do you do with that? Well, for the most part, you keep it a secret, and that's exactly what's been happening thus far. Okay, make no mistake that people really studied this stuff, and back in the olden days, people were not distracted by TV and reality shows, and and like Dave said, the need to buy the next big TV or whatever. They had time to study. People of genius have said that it takes 10,000 hours, I think, to become good at anything, but it also takes devotion, decades sometimes to crack a problem. That's what Einstein did. That's what Newton did. That's what all the great thinkers and philosophers did. They devoted their time to a single thought, following it through to the end. And magic is a very similar practice. In fact, it ties right in with alchemy, which is a very, very complex subject matter as well. Alchemy, out of which our modern chemistry grew, losing all the spiritual components, unfortunately. It is a practice that's interwoven again. And we find that when it comes to distilling the materia prima, or white gold powder, or philosopher's stone, what are you going to do? There are certain invocations as well that I mentioned, certain words of power as you produce this material from in the alchemist texts.
Do you mind? I've got something to add to this. Let's not forget the tried and tested, true, ancient practice of making samurai swords. Not only is there particular phrasing involved in it, but it's said that the singing imprints itself into the metal.
Yes.
And I think that's very important. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and look, but that's exactly. I mean, that's the thing. Everything is connected, right? This is the first thing you have to realize. Everything is connected, right? Whatever you do, it has an effect on everything else. Sound travels out of your mouth, and it is in the world at that point. You touch everything. Okay, you imprint, like you said, Dave, you imprint a certain matrix, the chanting, as it were, sometimes, right? People believe, and in fact, we know that we can levitate with sound. We know this for one, right?
That's true.
We've seen it, and we believe that some of the ancient buildings may very well have been built that way, like using sound that is generated just by human beings and instruments and so forth. Could have levitated stones. In fact, in Tibet today, some of the travelers in the 30s and 40s that went to Tibet said they witnessed, and in the 19th century as well, they said they witnessed these monks sitting around this bowl-shaped indentation, and they put a rock in there, and they had all these instruments facing that stone wall and the rock, which was quite large, and it actually lifted up the stone cliff because they had to build something up there. And if you look at some of the monasteries that are built in Tibet specifically, they're right in the cliff face. Not easy to build. Not today, not any time. Right? Other places as well. Or in fact, the pyramids. There's some thought that some kind of levitation, acoustic levitation, was used to move those stones. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. The point is, it works. We see it under laboratory conditions, right, Dave?
Mm-hmm. That's it. Well, it's been replicated. It works, and they've used a whole bunch of different things like droplets of water, elements of different kind of sizes. But yes, it's possible. Yes, it is real. Levitation is real, and via sound is real. Yes. Yeah.
And like, this is not shiny side out stuff at all. You can Google it yourself and look on the YouTube clips to see it. When we come back from the break, we'll take you through the Renaissance and Baroque and share with you our theory on magic. And hopefully that will be interesting. We'll also talk a little about the Third Reich, the Nazis, voodoo, hoodoo, and juju practices, as well as black magic, which of course is probably the most interesting to you guys. But we also talk about why, in fact, magic is taken away from us. And by that I mean, why are we conditioned to laugh about it? But we'll talk about that later, because that's a whole different thing to get into here as well. I do want to remind you, though, that this is listener-funded radio. Freedomslips.com is the largest listener-funded radio talk radio station on the net, and people like Dave and myself and all the other great hosts bringing you all this information courtesy of Nighthawk, who holds the station together. And is not a one-man show, but close enough. There are helpers in the background. So if you have the time and the money to donate, anything really would be great. That's just something I would like you to do.
Do you know what? I think all of the listeners have $1 available in their pocket. They have $1 to be able to click on the donate button and send a message to the station owner that you like Shiny Side Out. I gave $10 last week. I'm not in a position this week to be able to give $10, but I will shortly, probably next week's show. That maybe I'll give a larger donation for the 100th show, Meki.
Actually, I still have to give my donation yet, which I haven't been able to because I have to move monies around. Mm-hmm. But I still stand by my $500 that are coming your way now.
Yeah, awesome. So
Meki. let me get that through my accounts, and I will. It'll probably be a credit card transfer, but nonetheless, probably the 100 show is or be just before it. So next week I should be in a position to send that through, and that's how much I believe in the station. I think that's important, but not that Dave and I get paid, and that's not really the point. Mm-hmm. We have got a 2-hour forum every week, and thank you, Nighthawk, for providing that.
Exactly. Do you know, Meki, just before the break sound, I want everyone to remember that there's magic outside of what we think. I remember the native Aboriginals would point the bone, and we'll get to that later on with the voodoo component, but they had their own voodoo as well, which hopefully isn't practiced anymore. And the CIA practiced the same thing, which is called remote killing. And let's hope that...
the death prayers. Yeah,
that's right. But there's the music. I'd like to say thanks to everyone who's brand new to the show. Hang on for this short break.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
There is no denying the world is awakening. We see it in the global uprisings and demonstrations of the people around the planet and the new way of thinking and living that is arising naturally within each one of us and our communities. I have been a major player in this global shift and movement for over 20 years and have helped tens of thousands of people around the world change their lives and find their voice in order to help create the paradigm change we so desperately need. Join me here at Revolution Radio on the Just Bernard Show every Tuesday at noon Eastern Time for 2 hours of powerful interviews and discussion with some of the most influential visionaries of consciousness, alternative media, and suppressed knowledge. We promise to reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience.
Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank, or all the banks for that matter. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it. I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? Well, squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drive to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. Thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. If you plan to call in and speak with one of our hosts, please turn down your radio and separate yourself from any background noise and wait for the area code to be called on before you speak. And don't forget, Revolution Radio freedomslips.com is listener supported. So stop by the homepage, freedomslips.com, visit the site support area to help support the host you're listening to's airtime. Thank you. Revolution Radio freedomslips.com, where the truth never sleeps. Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
You're back with Dave and Mackie's Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com. That's right, the #1 listener-supported talk radio on the net. Since it is listener-funded radio, like I reminded you before the break, if you'd like what you hear, please go to freedomslips.com and push the donate button on the site support page. It's on the left in the chat, if you're there now, which we would like you to go to. Your donation is greatly appreciated and helps run this station. And as I said, I've pledged 500, which will be coming Nighthawk. I haven't forgotten. I just have to move some monies around. And David has donated $10. Thank you, David. That's awesome. I'd like to say hello to all of the new listeners we have today, and we're glad that you're on board. Now, we're halfway through show number 99, and we're talking about magic. The real thing, the real deal, we'll get to in a little while, but there are other forms of magic. And right now, we're actually going to go through the history of magic a little, certainly in our cultural environment, which brings us, Dave, to the Renaissance, I believe.
Yeah, the Renaissance. You know what? A great period in time, I think that would have been awesome. There was so much out there and people believed in everything. And I think that if we'd been able to, at that point, get the UFOs... Actually, no, that was true. They witnessed it, didn't they, in Middle Europe? Dogfights and everything in the air. If we'd been able to keep on it, I think we'd be in a much better position right now. But anyway, if we ever invent a time machine, Mackie, let's go back there, huh?
Done.
All right. So, Renaissance. This is Renaissance humanism saw resurgence in Hermeticism and Neoplatonic varieties of ceremonial magic. The Renaissance, on the other hand, saw the rise of science in such forms as dethronement.
The dethronement?
Yeah, dethronement. I'm sorry. And the Ptolemaic theory of the universe, the distinction of astronomy from astrology and of chemistry from alchemy. And, we can see we all live through that today. We're living in the other side of that. And I think it's great. The 7 arts, I think, of the magic arts or arts prohibitae, we're looking, artis prohibitae, that's the Latin, or arts prohibited by canon law by Johannes Hartlieb in 1456 were nigromancy, which is necromancy, which included black magic and demonology, geomancy, hydromancy, aeromancy, pyromancy, and chiromancy. And what's that last one, Mackie? It's
scapulomancy.
Unbelievable.
Which is palmistry.
Palmistry, okay, cool. Both, is that bourgeoisie?
Bourgeois, very good, sir.
Both bourgeoisie and nobility in the 15th and 16th centuries showed great fascination with these arts, which exerted an exotic charm by their ascription to Arabic, Jewish, Gypsy, and Egyptian sources, and the popularity of white magic increased. However, there was great uncertainty in distinguishing practice of superstition, occultism, and perfectly sound scholarly knowledge and pious ritual. The intellectual and spiritual tensions erupted in the early modern witch craze, which we know about the witch hunts and the craze, further reinforced by the turmoil of the what's that?
The
Protestant Reformation, especially in especially in Germany.
Reformation under Luther.
Yeah,
Yep.
especially in Germany, England, and Scotland. There
was a split in the Catholic Church. Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't want to be a witch in those times, Mackie.
No, not a good idea. Or red hair, for the matter. No, look, you're right though. But it was a tumultuous time. Martin Luther had just nailed his thesis on the cathedral in Worms, which led to the eventual split of the church, and now into what would be called the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church. Later on, there arose also the Anglican Church over a different matter. But it certainly led to many wars, and then you can argue that the 30 Years' War from 1618 to 1648 was largely fueled by the fight of the Catholic South with the Protestant North, more or less. And and Europe, in fact, is still split that way to some extent. Southern countries or nations are Catholic, whereas the northern countries are largely Protestant. Okay, so that brings us to the Baroque era. I love the Baroque. I don't know why. It's just funny powdered wigs and all that, right? Now, the study of the occult arts remained intellectually respectable well into the 17th century, and only gradually divided into the modern categories of natural science, occultism, and superstition. in my mind, a necessary development, but albeit unfortunate, because we have lost the supernatural or the philosophical approach to some extent to science, which is unfortunate. The 17th century also saw the gradual rise of the Age of Reason, and while belief in witchcraft and sorcery, and consequently the irrational surge of early modern witch trials, receded, a process only completed at the end of the Baroque period, circa 1730. This is really when I guess the Age of Reason started to its full extent, doing away with what were then seen as superstitions. Now, I believe, which is very interesting, it also sort of coincides with the Illuminati and the rise of the Freemasons, certainly in the New World. So I'm thinking here that at that particular point, there was a covenant created, maybe an agreement reached, to keep magic from the people, to keep magic with the initiated few. Now, Christian Thomasius still made opposition, as he argued in 1710 in his Dissertatio de Crimine Magiae, that it was meaningless to make dealing with the devil a criminal offense, since it was impossible to really commit the crime in the first place. Because, obviously you can't deal with the devil, so that was like the rational approach. In Britain, the Witchcraft Act of 1735 established that people could not be punished for consorting with spirits, while would-be magicians pretending to be able to invoke spirits could still be fined as con artists. So there was also a law, an effect on the law. It was no longer possible, I guess, to be burned, to be a witch, because it could not be a crime, because it didn't exist, because it was nonsense in the view of these people. Now, I think, as I said, something else went on as well. I know it's just my opinion, and you can deride me for it, but I think there was some agreement reached in the 18th century amongst a whole bunch of people that had the ancient knowledge to keep it from us. And we would be living in a very different world if the Age of Reason hadn't happened the way it did. We'd be living in a very different world where alchemy and those things would still be very much in the public eye, whereas today they are not. They're still being practiced. There are alchemists. There are magicians. There's witchcraft. And not to be confused with Wiccan beliefs, okay, which is earth magic and a whole different thing, paganism.
That's
so
true.
we tend today... Yeah, today we tend to throw it all in one pot, right, Dave? Everything is thrown into one pot, and Satanism and devil worship, occultism, pagan worship, Wiccan worship, witchcraft in general, magicians, the paranormal.
To a lesser extent, Reiki.
Yes. And no, guys, it's not all the same. Magic is not witchcraft necessarily, and it certainly isn't demonology. It might be a component part, and it is definitely not the worship of Satan. Okay, it's not devil worship, guys. That's something else. Again, that's necromancy to some extent. The death magic, black magic, blood magic. These are all powerful magic things, and still to this day it's being practiced. Even human body parts are playing a part. That's why African albinos are such an endangered species. There's a documentary which is horrendous. African albinos will be hunted down by the juju man and cut up for body parts, especially prepubescent boys are very valuable to these peddlers in dangerous magic, I would say. And people still get marked. They still get marked. You still have visible tattoos and scarrings which are magically attributed, to protect you or to ward off evil spirits or to give you certain powers. People still use tattoos in the same way. In fact, that's the origin of tattoos. Tattoos are meant to give you power. A lot of martial artists, right, from any culture now, use tattoos to give them strength and power. Okay, they draw on it. This is all part of the magical rituals we have. These days it's more for, I guess, empowerment, if you will, or decoration. The roots of this are back in tribal and folklore magic. Okay, it was the sailors that brought it back from the Pacific and the Americas to I guess to Europe. And trust me, the old way of doing tattoos is extremely painful. You definitely wouldn't.
You wouldn't want to go through that, no.
No, sir. So I just want to quickly touch on a few things. And I know that Dave loves to talk about the advanced science component. So we've got a theory in magic here, which we formulated in 3 component parts, really. Okay, and we want to go through those with you. So the first type of magic is the parlor magic. It's the magic you see performed on stage. it's a sleight of hand, illusion, misdirection, a clever use of mirrors and smoke and so forth. And is by far the most common and generally accepted kind of magic as entertainment. Even street magicians performing for you, there's element there as well. Now, I've seen some things which I can't explain, and I'm fairly scientifically minded. I know people don't believe that, but it's actually true. And I always want to understand the trick behind it. I want to understand how the person has done it. And not always can I do that, so it leads me to believe that potentially some of those street magicians may in fact be practicing something more than just sleight of hand. Potentially. Okay, but this is the most common type of magic that we're familiar with today, right? In Sydney right now, we've got the Illusionists 2.0. There's
I
David
saw that.
Copperfield. And did you actually send my wife and the family to see it while I was looking after my daughter at home? I was a good husband that day. But I was told it was great. Right?
In
fact, one of the magicians
really
died.
good. Yes, the hypnotist.
The hypnotist, right?
Yeah,
he
fell off a
to his
balcony.
death. Yeah, who knows what happened there? I mean, a lot of death surrounding us here at the moment. It's interesting. But Dave, I know that the next one is your particular favorite, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. So
the second form of magic.
That's right. I just wanted to say also that everyone's familiar with Penn and Teller, and they have a great sleight of hand, deception, distraction skit, which is just fantastic. And he takes a lit cigarette, puts it in his ear. It's very, very cool. And they describe each one of those elements. And if you can use those elements, the words that describe those elements, to describe your government, they're doing the wrong thing. Sleight of hand, deception. Yep. Okay, so the advanced science technology component of this, I wanted to start by saying that Arthur C. Clarke, he wrote 3 laws. It's the Clarke's 3 laws of prediction formulated by the British writer. This is Arthur C. Clarke. They are, number 1, when a distinguished but elderly scientist states that something is possible, he is almost certainly right. When he states something is impossible, he is probably wrong. And I think that's an extraordinary rule. And everything we've known about quantum physics makes that line true. He didn't even know what he was talking. He didn't understand quantum physics when he wrote those laws. Number 2, the only way of discovering the limits of the possible is to venture a little way past them into the impossible.
Love that.
And that is so true. Oh boy, you get a skeptic on. You just next time I'm just going to feed the troll that line. And this is rule number 3. This is the point of what I'm talking about here in advanced science and technology. Point number 3 of Arthur C. Clarke's rules: any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And that is true. I gave a hint at the beginning of the show for that. To be honest, some of the machines that I've seen that have been to do with free energy machines come under this next heading that I've put in, which is the anti of those 3 rules. And this is anti-magic. When science is the hidden component in a seemingly mechanistic but otherwise inexplicable device. Great line.
I love it.
And that is when, if you've got a magnet and a computer fan and they make it spin, it's only because there's one of those reed switches in it that they've got hidden magnets in it. So when they put the magnet near it, it makes it turn. Yeah, there was a lot of devices in the last 100 years that have purported to have been free energy, which haven't. And this is the advanced technology, science, magic thing. It really is important to understand the components, that what is magic, what really is magic. To us,
yes,
magic is something that doesn't seem to have any of the laws of physics. It can't really work. It shouldn't be working, and yet it still does. With our minds, the way we look at stuff, I think it's important to understand that, that's one of the first things we'll try to make sense of it. So, this is a much more crucial component of what I term the magic construct. So, ancient legend, fairy tales, etc. speak of voice-controlled doors, i.e. open sesame. It can be open says me. A lot of people think that says. Who knows? Flying carpets, and just any description of someone who's sitting on something that appears, maybe you just put a cloth over it so that you could conceal the technology and you flew around. I don't know. Flying horses. People talk about horses and flying chariots a lot in the ancient times because their vocabulary wasn't quite good enough to describe something that was an anti-gravity device. I don't know. But they appeared as magic to them. And in Star Trek, like the energy matter converters, they've got a holographic room. They have devices that can create food out of thin air, and they can beam you down onto the planet surface and back again, for instance.
And in fact, that's a theme in fairy tales. Like there's a German fairy tale which is like a magic tablecloth. When you say the right words, it fills with food. Similarly, the gin in the lamp can create seemingly matter out of nothing, out of energy, right?
Wow, yes, that's right. Today, few of us would be able to explain how a phone or television work or a computer works. We think we know how they actually work, but if someone told you to fix one, you wouldn't know. Yeah, we do. There's only pretty much a single chip on a board that's only an inch long by half an inch. That's it now in the phone. The rest of it's just glass touch technology and a battery. Good luck.
Yeah.
Past generations would look upon that technology, as I've said, and shout magic or witch if we were in the Renaissance period. Don't go back to the 15th or 16th centuries. Go way back, right?
Burn!
Yeah, that's right. Remember that it's still valid in some cultures today that if you take a photo of someone, their soul is captured.
Yeah. Yep.
And that could have come from a device that other people had at the time, like the Vimanas, people who flew around the world in those days, who might have actually been able to do that. Maybe. I'm going out there on a limb.
Yes, sir.
There's similar mysteries that are inexplicable today, but which may become commonplace tomorrow. We simply have not the know-how yet to understand them. We don't know. So at the moment, visitations, that's in my area of expertise. Poltergeists, we've seen the movie. We understand the grief involved with them and the violent nature at which it appears to be. Some people have stated that poltergeists are the brain power of the person watching it, and others state that it's a being coming from somewhere else to interact. And if anyone's had a Ouija board in a rental property and had to move out, you'll know what I'm talking about. It can be a nasty experience. Out of place artifacts like the watch in the stone, the hammer in the carbon, in the coal, Mickey, the gold chain in a rock, dimension shifts, tears in space-time continuum. What about the abbey, the lintel in the abbey that has the helicopter and looks like an offshore powerboat?
Yeah, absolutely.
The
Abydos temple. Yep.
Yeah,
yep.
Abydos. That's right. So if we were flying a helicopter and suddenly went through a time portal and end up, at the same location but 1,000 years earlier or 10,000 years, who knows? For some reason,
Who knows?
Yeah, that would seem like magic to them there, and they would record it like they have. And also clairvoyance. So clairvoyance is a pretty broad topic to describe someone's mental abilities and being able to see things about people, to read minds, to see the future. My mum was one, and I don't think I'm a clairvoyant. I just see stuff related to me in the future. But I think
that's useful, though, right? I mean, that's not bad.
Except lotto numbers doesn't work. Trust me. Yeah, but Harvard creates brain-to-brain interface, allows humans. This is a story. Allows humans to control other animals with thoughts alone. Now, do you remember? Was it not Super Troopers. What was the other one? With the land of pretty people, Meki. Medic.
The land of pretty people.
No.
Medic. Starship Troopers.
Starship Troopers. Thank you. See, those were the hints you needed to work out that puzzle.
That's true.
The head guy dressed in like the grey SS outfit, who is now, I think, was it Patrick something or other?
Yes.
Patrick Harris?
Hauser.
Doogie Howser or Patrick Harris. Yep.
Doogie Howser. Harris something, yeah.
Yeah, he plays the voice Steve in The Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Steve!
Oh.
Yellow. He walks up to the large creature underground and does a mind-to-mind interface with it to know what it's thinking. They use that.
Yes.
They use that in the film. And I think all of these are magic to us today, and you're right, Meki, that they may become commonplace in the future.
Yeah, and that's really the key here. This second component part of our magical construct, if you will, the advanced technology, we don't view the world as cut off into different boxes. It's all a holistic whole. Mm-hmm. And the only reason certain things are mysterious is because we don't understand them yet. We don't, or we're being kept from understanding them. Mm-hmm. So it is really key here to make that distinction, because the next component I'm going to talk about to you guys is apart from like advanced technology or things we don't quite grasp yet from a technology point of view, would it be possible? And this is the third component of our magical construct here, like a little three-sided triangle, actual magic. Now, what does that mean, actual magic?
Not an illusion, and not technology.
Correct. So what if there were an energy field out there that is not accessible to most of us? An energy field maybe in the form of ley lines, or geomancy, or there's the Indian rope trick. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. And also chi, like the life energy that people talk about in general, or ka, as the Egyptians had it. And that's still a very powerful image that we have, this energy. Now, an energy that can tap into the very fabric of our reality, something like a quantum manipulator. Now, and bear with me here for a second. What do I mean by that? Recent scientific studies have shown that our universe does not function the same way on the macro and the micro, which is the quantum levels. Different rules seem to apply to either. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, it means that if you go into the small, then our macro world no longer makes sense. However, think about it this way. What if there were an energy or a force or a technique that could help you to manipulate the quantum field from the macro world? Now, we're actually doing that with the split screen experiment. Okay? How? Because we're shooting electrons at this screen. We're observing it. Get a nice interference. We get a nice pattern of two lines, mm-hmm. On the screen. Okay, like we expected. We stop observing it. We get an interference pattern, meaning that the electron changes its nature.
From a particle to a wave.
Correct. Now, that's magic. If you really think about it, we've changed a particle, which is the smallest piece of matter that we have, the electron, the smallest piece of matter, and we have changed its nature by simply observing it or not observing it. What if there were a more powerful technique available? Maybe you could speak certain words. Maybe there's a ritual you can do. I don't know. Look, I'm just putting it out there, guys, okay? You could accomplish amazing feats. And this is where I think the actual mystery of magic lies. Okay? And either as yet officially undiscovered energy or force, or maybe deliberately suppressed energy or force by agencies and interest groups that are using it to their own advantage exists, okay? Or a technique exists that can harness certain powers which we haven't unlocked yet. Again, either deliberately suppressed or not yet discovered. Now, I want to give you some examples here when it comes to technology and the invisible. I ask you, have you ever seen electricity? Not the effects of electricity, but electricity. Have you seen electricity move around the cable? No, you haven't. Okay. You've seen electrical discharges when they interact with the real world, like a lightning strike, or potentially, when you've got a short in your PowerPoint, you see a spark, but you haven't seen the electrons moving inside the cable. X-rays. Do you know why X-rays are called X-rays? Well, they're called X-rays only in the English-speaking world. They're called Röntgen rays after Dr. Röntgen, who discovered them in Germany. Because they were a whole new category of rays we had no idea about. Now, we understand the spectrum a lot better now, right? I'm talking about the frequency spectrum.
Electromagnetic spectrum.
Correct, sir. Out of which we only see a very small part, and we've shown you the graph before. So you know what we're talking about. You've got microwaves and infrared and so forth on either side, as well as ultraviolet. So there's a spectrum, and it's massive. So, but you have not seen an X-ray. You've seen the result of an X-ray, most likely in your own life. It's like magically, it sees through your skin and not as dense tissues to the more denser tissues, which are reflected in an image, like your bones or metal plates or whatever you have in your body. Right? It's not magic. It's just advanced science. However, what if there were another energy form out there? Okay? What if there were another force out there that the ancients knew about, we have totally forgotten about, or were made to forget because it is too powerful for us? Or, how can I put this best? Maybe the elite decided that it's only for them. And we'll come to that in a second as well. Now, to go a little bit further into why we react to certain things, you should always be suspicious when you have an automatic reaction to anything. As soon as you've got an automatic reaction, it's conditioning. Okay, so for example, Pavlov's dogs, right? Now, Pavlov, back in the 19th century, decided, I'm going to test, or I'm going to study the conditioned reflex. He would have a bell ring and bring the dog some food. The dog would, salivate, and he would do that over a period of time. And then he would leave the food out, and the mere ringing of the bell was enough to make the dog salivate. That's a conditioned reflex, a conditioned response. We have the very same thing. Now, listen to what I'm saying now. What is your reaction when I say all you need is love? Your first gut reaction.
You're a pinko hippie.
Did I make you cringe? Are you thinking I'm a pinko hippie? Okay, why? You're conditioned to think that way. What if I say
Come in.
UFO or visitor? You may dismiss me out of hand. But why? Because you were conditioned to do so. Why can't you just take what I've said at face value and say, okay, that's interesting, Mackie, tell me about it. No, immediately, not maybe our listeners here, but certainly the larger population would think I'm a crackpot. A shiny side outer, as it were. What if I say magic, meaning the real thing? You would laugh out loud. Why? Because you were conditioned to do so. It's stuff of fairy tales. This is not real. Magic. What are you, some kind of fool? The years all of us spent in institutions learning about the world, about how we fit into society, are in essence conditioning rituals. That's what they are. We're being conditioned to be useful little robots in our society. We're not taught to be creative, but rather derivative and mundane. Perfect little conforming and performing robots. I should have added consuming. We're also consuming robots. Okay, that's what the educational system does, and it's doing an excellent job at that. So why is this conditioning so important? We've taken out all the controversial things. See, Noam Chomsky said a very smart thing once. He said you can have any discussion you want. You can discuss any topic with any with any consequences you like, as long as you discuss it within a certain framework, within a box. So society has given us the box. We can discuss whatever we want within that box. You go outside the box, ooh, that's bad. They laugh at you. You're crazy. Sorry, Dave, go ahead.
Why would anyone want to condition us away from things like mysteries and magic?
Well, you're right. You might argue because it's a waste of productive time, much better spent in the gristle mill that is our society, right?
Yeah.
But what if there was something to it, Dave? What if this energy were real, right? I mean, our interest in the subject is certainly real enough. It's a very popular topic and has always been a very popular topic, like we've seen in the history of it. I mean, the history goes back much further, right? These things are real enough, and people have used magic over centuries to further their own agenda, very recently in fact as well. So but Dave, why would you want to condition us away from these things? I mean, if you took the wonder and the mystery out of life and made it purely mechanical, that would make for a very poor life, wouldn't it? But it would also make for a life that needed to have voids filled, and consumerism fills a void within us, I think, right?
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah.
Like we have dismissed the spiritual side of ourselves. We've become like conditioned little robots performing in a society that is in fact detrimental in every way possible to our health and to our spiritual well-being, to the way we should live. I've said this before and I say it again. Why is it that I can't just get my Amish friends together and build a house in some field? I can't do that. The Amish can, I can't. Because I live in a box that is confined by rules and laws and property and money and banks. Whoever put the banks in charge? We did. Foolishly.
Yeah, true.
We did. The financiers. We let that happen. How did it happen? What happened to being useful in society? No offense, but most people these days are mostly parasites. We've got parasitic occupations that are only there, including myself, to further the system. There's no real need for any of us, or most of us, to exist in order for the human race to progress. We just keep the machine going. We keep the machine going, right? What do banks add? Nothing.
Nothing. They just
create
take
money out of nothing. Yeah, they take. In fact, they make our world worth less by creating inflation, by creating fiat currency, by creating interest rates. Interest on what and how? I mean, why do I pay bank fees, for argument's sake, right? I mean, okay, so I'm digressing slightly from the topic, but the point is, we have been boxed in, and our educational system is meant to box us in. Germans, the Prussians specifically, got the living daylights kicked out of them by Napoleon. So why is that? Because they had a very good educational system back in the 18th century, which focused on creative thinking and philosophy and reason and so forth, right? So they thought, this is no good, because that doesn't make a very good soldier. Like a philosopher is a horrible soldier. Especially if you can think about the consequences. So what the Germans do, they changed the educational system to become a rote learning educational system.
Yep.
So you're learning everything off by heart, and you're punished if you can't, you're flogged and whipped, and the creative thinking was put aside. And that created the Prussian war machine, which arguably was one of the most impressive in the 19th century. That was further taken on in the 20th century, where the educational system became so indoctrinated that it was very difficult to get any clean, fresh, new thoughts through. Books were banned. There was argument about different things, and it became less about education, but more about indoctrination. Okay, because you now had a factory culture. You had to produce people that would be happy to work in a factory for 20 hours a day, whatever, right? You had to produce people that would be happy to sit at a desk for 10 hours a day, rather than romp through nature and ask philosophical questions. And you also had to create consumers. You had to create people that would expect a product to fail within a certain time. My grandfather had a bike that he used all his life. All right, 67 years he used his bike. We would not expect to have something last that long. I try to buy things that last that long.
This is part of the fast culture that we created. We accepted by voting with our money, fast food should be banned. There should be no way to sell anyone any food that has no nutritional value and high fat, salt and sugar content to do what to you? You should only be able to buy healthy food, but no. So that extends past food. It extends into fashion. There's fast fashion now because they can get it off the shelves. They can design it, deliver it, and have it only available for this season, and it only lasts this season. Plus, you would never want to wear it again because we're told that we can't wear the same thing again, and next year there'll be better stuff out there. There is a whole movement called slow food. Look it up.
Yes.
I think you'll be really impressed by it.
In fact, in Sydney, we've got a slow food zone in the Blue Mountains where you don't find any fast food outlets. It's fantastic.
Awesome. That's the way.
Correct, sir.
So instead of getting you off, I've put the slide up, Meki, which is...
Oh, great. Yeah, look, this is important, guys, because some of these magic rituals, and Dave has got the slide there now, I think,
Yep.
have found their way into the Nazi world as well. The Nazis were very, very much into the occult. Make no mistake about it. They were very much into this mythical Tula society, which sort of founding society for the Nazi movement as well. And an examination of their philosophy soon reveals mystical undertones and a very strong belief in blood and earth magic. The Nazi rallies were rife with magical symbols and rituals, right? Not to mention the Holocaust, which literally means burnt offering in Hebrew, and is arguably the largest human sacrifice in history. Now, Dave has put up a slide in our videocast that shows you the sign for the Hitler Youth Brigade, which is a triangle. You form a triangle with your hand, holding in front of your face.
Sorry, hold it up. Do it again, Mekki. Do it again. Yep.
Okay, so like this. Yep.
Yep.
And it's also, believe it or not, the Obama Youth Brigade gesture. So I don't know if he studied history or not, but there it is. They also had an extreme obsession with the recovery and ownership of supposedly magical artifacts, such as the spear of Longinus, who was meant to have pierced the side of Jesus on the cross. Now, the other rituals as well. Now, if you've seen this in the science of the of magical symbols, covering half your face.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Then you've got this.
Yep.
You've got that. Okay. You've got this. There are a lot of these signs, and I'm holding my hand up in various forms here. You can probably see it better on the live telecast. But essentially, the devil sign. Well, they are the devil sign to some extent, but there are other reasons for it as well.
The rock-on sign. All rock people do it. Yep.
Yeah, they ain't exactly. They're very, very old. They predate any Satanism, any Christian belief in the devil. These signs are ancient, right? This is the key thing here to remember. And it is these and people in the know seem to be using them. Presidents, celebrities, they're all using these hand signals, maybe to each other even. Who knows? But they're putting like hexes on you and spells, and trying to bring you under their control, which, if you look at a heavy metal concert, for example, you will feel that it's there. If you look at a Nuremberg rally that the Nazis conducted, it's very similar. The lighting, the mood, the mass adulation.
I have to say that they were excellent at branding and design. Their marketing had never been done before until then. They were the kings of it. Everything was branded, all of their outfits. In fact, their outfits were designed to look menacing.
Yep.
And to have an autocracy. Yeah?
Absolutely. That is exactly correct, sir. And we have to be careful as well when we adopt these. Most of us don't know what these symbols mean. I mean, they have quite powerful symbols. And with the right thoughts, they can cause some serious havoc. But just to on the energy, before we maybe talk a little bit about voodoo and hoodoo, this energy seems to have been used by the ancients in abundance. I mean, there are the ley lines. You've got the ancient sites like Stonehenge and the dolmens and the mounds in the Americas, which seem to be covering a grid on the planet, which is the ley line grid, which may be this sort of energy that flows through maybe the living body of the earth, if you will, right? Like, again, feng shui, right? I mean, there's energy flowing everywhere. You can take advantage of it.
Just for those people who don't know what ley lines are, I think there's 16 intersecting straight lines that join themselves all around the globe, and they intersect in such a way that you'd be completely confounded by just how precise they are and where all the ancient cities are. It's not happen chance or happenstance that these places existed. Viking temples found hundreds of miles apart in a row in dead straight line. They were told to put the temple exactly there. There's an energy in the earth. There's an energy being created and being tappable if you're in the right spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And imagine you could tap into that energy. We all talk about the free energy devices and so forth. Always talking about some kind of electricity or that is generated. Imagine an energy force or an energy field or force field that works on a different kind of setup. It would explain why ancient cultures don't have the same kind of machinery we do. They don't have the same kind of technology that we would have today because they walked a different path. They probably wouldn't burn fossil fuel. Okay, we knew they were interested in gold. We know that, right? White gold powder, maybe, right? We know they're interested in other things as well, and we know they're interested in these ley lines, and we know they had a lot of these. These are special rocks as well, Dave, right? These are not any old. These are there's granite. There's also granite with quartz in it. So these rocks have special properties as well. They're not just any old rock that they just picked up, and for the most part, these rocks were transported over vast distances to be there. Right, to be at these special places. And make no mistake, churches and temples and mosques today are usually built on ancient sites of power. Okay? Wherever you see a church, especially old temple, whatever, you can be guaranteed that at some time in the past, there was a pagan place of worship underneath it that has this flow of power. Okay? Now, let's talk a little about voodoo, hoodoo, vodou, and juju practices. Right?
The voodoo, what you don't dare do, people.
Yeah, that's right. Now the purpose of hoodoo is to allow people access to the supernatural forces to improve their daily lives. So it's a very immediate thing. Okay, it helps people to attain power or success, which some people term luck, in various areas of your life. Right? Now, as in many other spiritual and medical folk practices, extensive use is made of herbs, minerals, parts of animal bodies, and individuals' possessions and bodily fluids, and all kinds of bodily fluids you can imagine. And they usually, the little talismans, right, Dave? So, but there's also, why don't we take this in turn, Dave, as well? These things.
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so the contact with ancestors or other spirits of the dead is an important practice within these conjure traditions. And the recitation of psalms from the Bible is also considered spiritually influential in hoodoo. Again, the words of power and ancestor worship. We've spoken about ghosts and how important the Day of the Dead is in our past shows. Okay, it seems we are moving on. We are moving on in some way into a different realm once we die. And these hoodoo practices tap into that. Now, due to hoodoo's great emphasis on individual spiritual power to effect desired change in the course of events, hoodoo's principles are believed to be accessible for use by any individual of faith. Hoodoo practice does not require a formally designated minister. So if your faith is sufficient, and again, I know I hate to mention the Bible again, but Jesus said with faith, the size of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. Maybe it is also that faith that is part of the energy, this power, this belief. Maybe belief is enough to change the world. Maybe this belief is the force we should foster.
Yeah, but it doesn't just come with belief, Mickey. There are, the inclusion in this is not just belief, but the homemade potions and charms. They form the basis of much rural hoodoo, but there are also some successful commercial companies selling various hoodoo products to urban and town practitioners. These are generally called spiritual supplies, and they include herbs, roots, minerals, candles, incense, oils, glitter, believe it or not, floor washes, sachet, powders, bath crystals, icons, aerosols, and colognes, many patent medicines, cosmetics, and household cleaning supplies for mainstream consumers have been aimed also at hoodoo practitioners. Some products have dual usage as conventional and spiritual supplies, examples of which include the Four Thieves vinegar, Florida water, and Red Devil lye. You know what? I know that thinking about this, I've seen examples used as certainly in Hollywoodized versions of this. There is, and like I said before, the native Aborigines or the Aboriginals in Australia would point a bone at someone. They had an object. They pointed the bone at you, and then they thought about you, and you would die. You believed that when they pointed the bone at you, that you would eventually pass away. There, outside of that is also, I don't know if we go into it, but little dolls, voodoo dolls.
Yes.
Yep. So you would take a section of hair from someone and stick it onto the doll. It makes that doll you, and then you would be able to do something to it. And these are all of these different components the charms and the potions. What about love potions? That's where this comes from the voodoo, from magic, from witchcraft. And this is where it all comes from.
You're right. And this is, again, the point we're trying to make here with you guys is that it's still being used today, right? And juju, even though it's commonly believed to be related to voodoo, it is not. It is not related. So voodoo and juju are not the same. But juju is sometimes used to enforce a contract or ensure compliance. So juju, in a typical scenario, a juju spell will be placed on a Nigerian woman, for instance, before she's trafficked to Europe for life and prostitution to ensure that she will pay back her traffickers and won't escape. The witch doctor casting the spell requires a payment for this service, of course, and juju is also commonly used in an attempt to affect the outcome of football games, believe it or not. So these magical practices are being used today, okay? And the slave traffickers use them to bind the people into it. So again, you can't divorce any of these components of reality. Okay, this is all connected, guys. The more you dig, the more you realize.
Yeah, completely. So it's the term juju and the practices associated with it traveled to the Americas from West Africa with the influx of slaves and still survives in some areas today, particularly among those various groups of Maroons who have tended to preserve their African traditions. There's also the potions that I forgot to mention to do with creating a zombie from you. They slow your heart rate down, and then you can rise again. But they're never quite the same, these people. I've seen documentaries on it.
It's some kind of plant extract or something like that's being used to cause some kind of neurological damage. But yeah, zombie stories, while maybe not as spectacular as the movies, certainly seem to have a kernel of truth in them, and making the person that is affected by it an easy tool for the practitioner.
Exactly.
Now, let's talk a little about black magic, okay? Because that is probably the most interesting for you guys, and that's probably the most prevalent today. The elite is using black magic. The elite is using black magic against us. It's inverting the symbols. It is corrupting the energies to their own gain. And the funny thing is this, right? Electricity is neither good nor bad. Magical energy is neither good or bad in my book. Electricity can be used to light a room, heat a room, cook food, or it can be used to electrocute someone.
Yep.
And electricity doesn't care what you do with it. So it's similarly in my estimation with magical energy. I know you probably think I'm crazy, but magical energy can be used for good, evil, or neutral. And it's entirely up to you how you use it. Having said that, though, I do believe that the use of this particular form of energy has got an extremely detrimental effect on your health if you use it against someone else. The common saying is, and in my family certainly we talked about it, whatever you put on someone is coming back to you sevenfold. Okay, any spell, any kind of incantation you put on someone else hit you sevenfold in the future. Now, interestingly, maybe you're familiar with A. Waite of the Rider-Waite Tarot deck, one of the most popular tarot decks in the world. During his period of scholarship, Waite provided a comprehensive account of black magic practices, rituals, and traditions in the Book of Black Magic and Ceremonial Magic. Other practitioners have expanded on these ideas and offered their own comprehensive list of rituals and concepts, but black magic practices and rituals include the following. And this is very, very important. True name spells. The theory that knowing a person's true name allows control over that person, making this wrong for the same reason. This can also be used as a connection to the other person or to free them from another's compulsion, so it is in the gray area. So meaning, if somebody knows your true name, and this is usually a name that you give yourself, okay? It's not necessarily the name your parents give you, but what is your name? How do you see yourself? And it's more like a spiritual kind of thing. And also immortality rituals. And from a Taoist perspective, life is finite, and wishing to live beyond one's natural span is not within the flow of nature. Beyond this, there's a major issue with immortality. Because of the need to test the results, the subject must be killed. Even a spell to extend life may not be entirely good, especially if it draws life energy from another to sustain the spell. So immortality through magic is merely a displacing of energy from one place to another. I know if there's this movie where someone has a candle, and every candle represents someone's life. And this person is given the opportunity to extend their life by taking a candle and putting it on their own. But not knowing, whose candle they're taking, they're affecting, of course, someone they know, and that's horrible. So it just the energy is just transferred. You're taking life energy from someone else. Necromancy. For purposes of usage, this is defined not as a general black magic, but as any magic having to do with death itself, either through divination of entrails or the act of raising the dead body, as opposed to resurrection, of course, or CPR. We're talking about raising a body through magical purposes. And then, of course, there are curses and hexes. And a curse can be as simple as wishing something bad would happen to another through a complex ritual, right? But they're usually more complex to be performed. And that's really the main practices of black magic that you would come across. And the unfortunate truth is that the black magic practitioners today are to be found in fairly high positions of power.
And CIA comes to mind.
Yes, sir. And look at the Bohemian Grove as well. That's held annually. So there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. We are just shining a light in. We don't have the answer. Look for yourself. See if today's episode of the Shining Side Out helped you at all, making a little more sense of your world. But I tell you, it's a little scary, Dave. It
sure is. The remote killing aspect of the whole thing was the worrisome thing. When we did that show, and I thought that was extraordinary. To be honest, during this show, I've been poked in the back twice and there's no one in the room. Everyone, we'll see you for the 100th show, 4-hour show, next weekend, right here on freedomslips.com, and we'll see you live.
Live.
Live. Bye all.
See ya.